Hatching is a 2022 Finnish film about a 12-year-old girl who discovers a strange egg in the woods and decides to keep it. And it begins to grow and eventually hatch into something more. The movie itself sort of exists on a much deeper level. And so that's sort of the overall story, but where the heart of the story is kind of lies underneath. And I would say, though, that the biggest issue I had with this is that this movie does tend to be on the nose a bit at times, and it could have used a bit more subtlety. The story is about Tina, who's a 12-year-old girl who's living in, at first glance, a perfect household. She's got two loving parents who encourage her. She's got a scamp of a little brother. She lives in a nice house in a nice neighborhood. She takes gymnastics, and she's on the verge of an important competition. However, all is not well below the surface, as this particularly idyllic life is more of a veneer than a reality. Her mother is obsessed with image, both of herself, as she's constantly filming her and her family in her blog videos and trying to show the world how great her life is, as well as in Tina's progress in gymnastics. Now, her mom apparently was some kind of a skater who won some awards back in the day, and she clearly regrets how she never quite made it. And so the burden of that, as is the case, ends up on the shoulders of poor Tina. And she pushes Tina pretty hard and kind of forces her to constantly strive to be better and constantly train and to continue to work as hard as possible in order for her to achieve what clearly the mom was not able to do when she was young. Of course, you see right from the very beginning how this kind of unhealthy focus really adds to the pressure and really digs into Tina's both self-confidence and her self-worth. And so, she kind of is struggling and she gets no help from her dad. So when the mom starts seeing like a local handyman, it's hinted at that the marriage was a bit more of an arrangement than it was for actual love, which is kind of sad. The first major crack occurs when the mom, whose character is actually credited as nothing more than mother in the film, is filming her family blog called Lovely Everyday Life, which is such an ironic name given that each of her videos is so meticulously controlled. It is anything but everyday. And this bird flies into the window, into their house, and starts causing havoc, breaking things and destroying stuff around the house. Finally, Tina is able to catch it, but the mother quickly kills it as a first sign of exactly how vindictive the consequences are when something ruins her good time. Later that night, Tina finds the bird was still alive and had an egg. So she feels guilty about it and she takes the egg home in order to care for it. So although it is an egg, it's really just a physical manifestation of the growing anxiety that Tina is feeling around her. And so as more and more things start to pile up for her, the egg starts to grow exponentially bigger. Once the egg actually hatches, the creature inside at first becomes kind of a sense of excitement for her as she's excited to care for something. But as her competition comes closer and a new neighbor moves in next door and joins the same class, she finds out that her mother has taken a lover, her level of stress begins to skyrocket. And that ends up revealing a very specific link between her and the creature that came out of the egg. Now, if it seems like I'm just rampantly spoiling this movie, I'm really not. I mean, this movie is not subtle, and it really makes no effort to hide its intentions. I mean, it's one of those things that I wish was done a little more subtly in the film. And the film is essentially, what if someone developed a multiple personality disorder, but it manifested itself externally instead of internally? So this creature is actually a part of her, and it's the part of her that she kind of desires to grow into, or she thinks she desires to grow into, as opposed to the innocent version of who she is now. And there's some nice moments here in the beginning where you don't know if the creature is either real or imagined. And I wish that they'd leaned into that a bit more, because it does become fairly obvious pretty quickly that this is not an imagined creature. And I think the movie could have really benefited from riding that line a little bit more and bringing that reveal a bit deeper into the movie. Instead, the creature continues to transform and get more and more out of control, trying to help Tina in her different circumstances. And Tina starts to panic, realizing that the only way to stop this is to essentially lose her childhood and her innocence as best as she can figure out. It's a well-told story with some good performances, especially the actress who plays Tina, who eventually has to play two roles of her and her dark half, and does it very convincingly. The visual style is sort of this heightened sensory look, kind of like a very light Tim Burton. The colors, they all pop kind of loudly, and everything is either very bright and colorful or just very deliberately stylized darkness. Its look is made to seem slightly surreal as opposed to a more grounded approach, which works well for the story. The special effects and the creature work is fantastic, like all of it. And it looks and feels super visceral and actually gross at times. At the end of the day, the movie is about the loss of innocence and how the outside pressure, while also coming of age, can manifest itself in ways that can be unexpected and dangerous, leading you to do things that you previously wouldn't have done or even thought of. You know, forcing you into being someone you didn't want to be in the first place, but by that point, it's too late. It's a great allegory to build your story on. I just wish it had been a bit more hidden inside the film. I'd give it a B, but let me know what you think.